Welcome back to the Jackrabbit Sports Hour. First edition of the video stream that we have here. Took us a while to get back going here for the second semester. Last show we had was back in early December or maybe even late November of the first semester. But new and improved Jackrabbit Sports Hour. Here we are in the Senger Studio Hall once again with Austin Senger. I'm Brent Bowen. It's great to have you all here with us. We'll start here quickly by talking about kind of the big trade, maybe the biggest trade in NBA history, the Luka for AD swap, as well as just our general thoughts from the Super Bowl. But quickly, we'll start with the Super Bowl. Thoughts from the Super Bowl this past Sunday.
I thought it was a very boring game. Eagles took a huge lead in the first half and never looked back, really. Mahomes did not play that well in the first. He picked it up in the second, but it didn't matter.
The game was already over.
Yeah, it didn't matter at that point.
I feel like I barely even watched the second half of the Super Bowl. I only ever watched the first half.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, we were both at a friend's house, and I mean, it's just like we got a lot of people over. There's plenty of other things going on. It's just like the Super Bowl is just kind of playing in the background. Hey, the house was going crazy when Cooper DeJean got that pick six, though. I mean, that was electric. I mean, me being an Iowa follower my whole life, Dad's from Iowa, so I've been a fan of them. I mean, watching Cooper DeJean house that pick, that was something special.
And it's his first touchdown.
First pick, first touchdown.
Yeah, crazy.
I mean, talk about more of the Super Bowl here in a bit, but then, it's February 12th today, so 11 days ago, the big trade broke. Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis. Luka, one of the young superstars of the league at 25 years old, 5-time first-team All-NBA, is just a generational talent. Going to the Lakers for Anthony Davis. I mean, you're the one who broke the news to me, and just what are your thoughts on how that could shape up the future of the NBA?
I was so shocked when I saw that news. I was laying in bed, scrolling on Twitter, and then I just see Luka Doncic to the Lakers, and I was just shocked. And I think that trade in general is a win for the Lakers, of course. You get that generational talent, and he's going to be playing for years to come. But for Anthony Davis and who was it?
Max
Christie. I don't see what the Mavericks were thinking with trading away Luka.
Well, then obviously the Mavericks can't do anything about it now, but Anthony Davis goes down with like a calf or a groin injury. He goes down with an injury either way. In the first game that he plays with the Mavericks, balled out in the first half, and then in the third quarter suffers that injury. And I mean, you're just like, classic Anthony Davis. He's been hurt so much in his NBA career, is hurt again right away. So that's just a disastrous early start to the AD era for Dallas.
Yeah, watching the beginning of AD his first game as a Maverick, and he's just going crazy in the first quarter. He was going absolutely nuts. And then you just see him just no contact injury. It's just like, I was thinking maybe the Maverick saw something that we didn't, and AD was just going to be his prime AD. But
and then they didn't believe in Luka. They kind of took a gamble and a chance that Luka's not going to live up to the player that maybe everybody thinks basically they think that he can't be the number one option for them to win an NBA championship when he almost did that last year, took them all the way to the finals. Obviously ran into a very good Boston team. We'll talk more about the Luka AD trade, the rest of the NBA trade. That wasn't the only crazy trade in the NBA. De'Aaron Fox going to the Spurs, much more. But we'll go backwards here, start talking about SDSU a little bit. It's basketball season, Summer League tournament about 1 month away, as the Summer League tournament at the Denny Sanford Premier Center begins March 5th. That's just 3 weeks away. It's hard to believe, but we're coming down to the wire. Each team 10 games into the 16-game conference slate. Each team has some big games upcoming this weekend. Men's team hosts in Omaha, but we'll start by talking about the women's team. They're undefeated still in Summer League play. They've had some tough tests. We'll have another one. We'll have a couple more this week, including North Dakota State on Wednesday. Then they welcome in Grace Larkins in South Dakota on Saturday. But I mean, just to think about what they've done for the past few years, 50-plus consecutive regular season wins in the Summer League. I mean, you're getting everybody's best crack because you're the top dog in the league, and they still can't get defeated in the regular season. I mean, obviously you're shooting down on the baseline behind the camera for every game. You've traveled with them a few games. I mean, how special of a season and how special of a group has this been?
Oh, this is a very special group, and you can see that. The past, 3 games or whatever, they start slow.
I mean, Oral Roberts is up 9-0 right away.
The opponents get a good enough league, and then we just come back out in the second half and on fire. Like, we can't miss. We're doing everything right. And that's what's special with this team is when we start rolling, they will eventually start rolling as a group. And that's just how they're able to win these games and build those leads.
Especially all the options that they have on that team. I mean, probably not going to have the player of the year on the team because Grace Larkins has been incredible this year. She's had multiple 40-point games. I think she's the only one in women's college basketball that's done that this year. She's going to be the Summit League Player of the Year.
Yep.
However, the rest of the Coyote roster is not very good, and that's when you look at the South Dakota State team. They have the reigning Summit League Player of the Year, Brooklyn Meyer, who, if Grace Larkins didn't exist, probably would win the award. Paige Meyer is obviously really good. And you've got all the freshmen that have contributed. I mean, there's just so many players that can contribute and do really good things for this team. That's just what makes them even better and what could possibly make them push towards the Sweet 16 this year in the NCAA tournament. I know the Sweet 16 back in 2019 they made it. Problem with the women's team is that they get a lot of tough draws, being like an 7, 8, 9, 10 seed. Right now they're being projected around that 8, 9 range once again, which if you're a 7 to 10 range, if you're a 7 to 10 seed, you have a better chance at winning a first round game because if you're like an 11 or a 12, you're playing a 5 or a 6 seed who's going to be pretty good. But if you're then you have a better you have more upside to make the Sweet 16 if you're an 11 or a 12 seed because then you get to play like a 4 and a 5 seed or a 6 and a 3 seed or something. Well, if you're an 8 or a 9, yeah, you have a decent chance at winning the first round, but then you're going to run into a 1 seed like a South Carolina or a UCLA. UCLA is the number 1 team in the country this year. They still haven't lost. Or like a Texas. We already saw how that went earlier this year. Yeah. Went to Austin and lost by 40. Austin, Texas. But I really just feel like if they can keep winning and hopefully get some luck from the committee and get to be a 6 or a 7 seed, then they'd have a better chance at making the Sweet 16. But I mean, even in 2019 when they made the Sweet 16, they were a number 6 seed. They went to Syracuse, beat an 11 seed Quinnipiac, I think it was, and then defeated 3rd seeded Syracuse. So the odds definitely much more in your favor if you can get to be a 6 seed than like an 8 or a 9, which we've seen in years past. We'll talk a little men's basketball here. I mean, it's been an up and down season for the men. I mean, they're very good at home. They're 11-0 at home coming into this week. They'll host Omaha with a chance to make that mark 12-0. They'll also have home game. They host Kansas City. They still host North Dakota State, so still a few more home games on the docket. But they've struggled a little bit on the road, going 2-7. But I really just feel like this team has a ton of upside if they can make it out of Sioux Falls. I mean, they've got Oscar Clough, who's really, really good, and they've got a ton of guards where if they can get hot, I mean, we've seen so many upsets in the NCAA tournament. Really, it's almost a tournament where anybody can beat anybody. Even if you're a 14, 15 seed, like if the other team is an off night and you're just on fire from 3 with Clough, you never know what can happen. But the men's team's still been a pretty fun group to watch this year, don't you say?
Yeah, this is a young men's team for SDSU, and they have so much upside when they start clicking. And you see that with these big games, like against USD the other time. We're just... Oh,
that's right. The Saturday game against USD just kind of took it to them. And then St. Thomas last week, too, you beat them by like 15-20. I mean, they're especially dominant at home. I mean, they've lost the least amount of home games in the country since 2011. Like Kansas and Gonzaga are the 2 teams kind of right in front of them. Both of them have gotten beat at home a time or 2 this year, and the Jacks have not. And it was crazy that the Jacks did lose 3 games at home last year. Had a very tough home slate. But, I mean... Yeah, they're 11-0 this year. They've played well on neutral sites. Beat McNeese State down at Sioux Falls. You're basically going to have home games.
Yeah, it's going to help
at the conference tournament.
Yep.
I mean, it's like we talk about the women, how it's going to be. I mean, we could I guess talk about that real quick. The women, it's like, can anyone in the Summit League beat this team?
I don't think so.
I mean, NDSU came close a couple weeks ago. They only lost. The game was tied with just 3 minutes left in Brookings, but I don't think the Jacks played close to as well as they could.
I just think we have so much depth and so many good players on this team. It's like I don't think anybody can stop us in that tournament, especially if it's going to be like a home field advantage.
Yeah, you got.
Home court advantage. My fault.
You got the Jackrabbit crowd in Sioux Falls. It's going to show up. I mean, right now they'd be a 1 seed. They'd be playing. It's a new format this year. Normally the tournament starts on a Friday with the 8-9s, and then on Saturday you have the 1 and 2 seeds playing, and the championship eventually is on Tuesday. This year the tournament starts on Wednesday. Jackrabbit women will likely be the 1 seed and would play Thursday, and the championship would take place on Sunday. So a little bit of a different format, but either way, it's Summit League tournament time. So, I mean, fans are going to show up, but you're the 1 seed, you're probably going to play either Omaha or Denver in that 8-9. They've dominated all those teams this year. The 4 or 5 seed right now, it's not looking very strong. I think St. Thomas, Kansas City are in those spots. I mean, really the only threats it feels like in this league are South Dakota State and Oral Roberts. And I mean, or South Dakota State and Oral Roberts, North Dakota State and Oral Roberts, I beg your pardon. But I mean, those two teams, they're going to be the 2 seed and the 2 and 3 seeds, and one of them's going to take the other side out. They're each going to be on the opposite side of the bracket, so it really feels like SDSU is going to be able to coast to the championship. But I mean, you can't take everything for granted, though, because, I mean, upsets can happen. We've seen upsets happen to the men and the women. Just a few years ago, the women were the 1 seed in the COVID season when the tournament took place at the Sanford Pentagon, and 8-seeded Omaha upset them. So you still got to play the games. These are still Division I athletes that are very capable of pulling off a good performance and beating the South Dakota State team. But it's going to be hard to see a team beat the women, and I mean, even the men. Even though they've been out of first place all season, they're 7-3 in third place right now, it still really feels like that in the end, they're the team to beat because they have the best player on the conference and they had that home court advantage at Sioux Falls. We'll move on to football now. Obviously, a lot happened over the last couple months with the loss at North Dakota State, and then Jimmy Rogers and staff leaves for Washington State. But now, of course, that created some turmoil a little bit on social media. But I mean, now we've flipped the page towards next season. I mean, obviously, you think about it right away. You see all the staff left. Oh, we've lost 30 to 40 transfers. Oh, next year we might not be very good. But I mean, you really look at the stages of the FCS. I mean, it really feels like there's only about 5 to 6 teams that have a real shot at winning the national championship. It seems to be South Dakota State, North Dakota State, South Dakota, I think, has entered the discussion now, and then Montana State. That really seems to be about the teams that consistently seem to compete. Obviously, like UC Davis had a good team this year. Sacramento State has had some good teams. Incarnate Word as well, but none of them have really felt like true national championship contenders. But those 5 to 6 teams that I just listed are. Despite all the turnaround that this coaching staff and roster has, I mean, it's still just a proud football program as far as like tradition goes. They've won 2 out of the last 3 national championships. It really still feels like they're going to be in a fine spot next year with all the hires that they made to this year's staff, as well as adding some guys to the portal.
Yeah, they definitely brought in a good amount of people from the portal, and with Dan Jackson as the new head coach, I do think this team will still be one of the teams you have to beat to go to that championship. With Chase Mason at quarterback, we've seen what he's been able to do when he gets his minutes. And I'm still very confident in this Jacks team, even after everything that's happened.
And I mean, there's still a long ways to go as well. I mean, you've still got another portal window that's going to open. You could have guys entering the portal. The Jacks haven't added probably as much as they might want to add as the offseason goes on. But I mean, it was just everything happened so fast with Jackson being hired on December 31st, and then trying to get guys in, and I think he's done a good job of recruiting. You basically have to re-recruit players that are basically everybody that's on the SDSU roster last year that wasn't graduated. Like, they basically have to recommit. You're either recommitting at SDSU or you're entering the portal to go commit somewhere else. And I think Jackson did a nice job of rallying the troops as best as he could. I know some players stepped up and committed themselves to SDSU and then did their best to convince other players. Obviously, you lost some key guys, like guys like Tucker Large. He was on the fence. Would have been a nice guy to have back, but I mean, you can't be mad at Large or really any of the guys that left to go to different places. I mean, like Gronowski going to Iowa. You can't be mad at any of these guys because in the end, they're choosing the opportunity that's best for them, and whatever they think is best for them, that's what they should do. And a lot of those guys following to Washington State, they decided, hey, because here's the thing about South Dakota State football. A lot of these guys are really unrecruited at a high school, or not very highly recruited at a high school. And guys like Rogers, they take a chance on these guys. So Rogers and staff, they take a chance on these guys. They believe in them. So these guys are almost returning the favor in a way by, hey, we believe in Rogers and staff and what they can do at Washington State. We want to stick with these guys. These are my guys. I want to go compete and keep winning games with them. at a higher level. So, and I feel like that's just an opportunity where it's the current landscape of college football. The transfer portal is just huge now. That's just left and right. People are entering the portal. So, I mean, really, everything's you kind of just have to expect the unexpected.
Yeah.
And so you've seen that happen. You've seen that hit the SDSU football program this year when you necessarily haven't seen that in years past, but I don't think it's unexpected. I know a lot of Bison fans kind of comparing it to, oh, we've lost guys too, but in the end, honestly, it's a different era of college football.
Yeah.
The transfer portal was not in the 2010s. When the Bison lost all their coaches, the transfer portal was not what it is now. So it's really an interesting thought. But I mean, in the end, they're two rivals. They're going to face off on October 25th, 2025 at Dana J. Dykow Stadium in Brookings. Very well could meet in the playoffs again next season. Should be a fun next football season. Likely to be the last that we talk about football, probably until we get around the spring game in April. And then eventually next season will come along before we know it. So. But either way, in the end, SDSU athletics in a very good spot. A lot of success all across the board. We didn't even mention the wrestling program that's top 15 in the country. They'll host Northern Colorado, or they hosted Northern Colorado last week, defeated the Bears. Will host Iowa State this upcoming Friday at First Bank and Trust Arena. Should be a great atmosphere. Would recommend you all to get to a wrestling environment, to get to a wrestling duel. It's a great environment if you have not already. We'll move on, talk a little national sports here. There's a lot to talk about because, I mean, the NFL season has come and gone. The Super Bowl just a few days ago. We just mentioned that a moment ago. Before we go talk about the Super Bowl even more, let's go through the coaching hires of the NFL because there was quite a few of them hired. There was 7 head coaches hired. Yep. I'll ask you to grade all 7 of the head coaching hires, and you can do the same to me. We'll start with top of the list, Chicago Bears, and this might have been the first. This is one of the first hires. Yep. The Chicago Bears hiring Ben Johnson, the former Lions offensive coordinator.
I'm going to give that hire an A. I think Ben Johnson's going to fit well with the Bears organization. It's going to give Caleb Williams a good offensive-minded head coach, and it's going to allow Caleb Williams to use his weapons now in the right way to hopefully be better next year than what they were projected to get. They were projected to be a good team this year in the NFC North, and they were last. So hopefully with Ben Johnson, they will move up that ladder to be in the spot where they should have been where they
were supposed to be last year, yeah. Because they hire Ben Johnson, they bring in Matt Eberflus as the DC, or not Matt Eberflus, he was just the head coach there. They hired Dennis Allen as the defensive coordinator, who is the former New Orleans Saints head coach. I think Dennis Allen's a solid hire. It's tough to call a guy solid. It's sometimes tough to call coordinators solid hires until you've actually seen them, because some guys can have success in different places than others. But I think the Bears have a lot of talent defensively that Dennis Allen is going to be able to succeed there as the defensive coordinator. I think Ben Johnson's an A hire too. I mean, it's just it's kind of the obvious hire for Chicago. The question was almost, does Ben Johnson want to be in Chicago? But I mean, there's so many weapons there with Caleb Williams, #1 pick from last year. They got a good receiving core, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, even Keenan Allen still got it despite an old age. We'll see how he performs next year. I think Swift is a decent back. We'll see if they make more additions to the running back and tight end rooms. Cool. But the offensive line really there is going to need some. Yeah. That's one thing that Ben Johnson really had in his favor at Detroit. That offensive line was so good. Jared Goff just had all day to pick apart defenses. So Ben Johnson, I think, is an A hire. It was the right move, and I think he was the top guy in this coaching carousel. And I think the Bears, that's a home run hire for them, and I think that they're going to be much improved next year than they were this past year. Next, we'll move on to the Raiders hiring Pete Carroll.
I'm going to give this like a C+.
Okay.
I think Pete Carroll's a great coach. He's a winning coach.
He's won everywhere he's gone.
Yeah, he's won everywhere, and I think it's probably a good fit for the Raiders. You're going to want a new environment in that place. And I think Pete Carroll will do that correctly to where they will be a better team than they've been in the past couple of years.
And it'll be interesting to see what the Raiders do at quarterback because they need that guy. But that's the thing. Pete Carroll wasn't given too long of a contract, only a few years. Mm-hmm. He's getting up there in age anyways. I think he's already the oldest head coach in NFL history, and he was just hired. But I mean, the guy's still in good shape. I think the guy's still got it. He won in Seattle. He won at USC. He's won at just many different places, and I think it's the perfect hire, as you mentioned. Just a different environment. The Raiders need to establish themselves in culture.
Yep.
I think Pete Carroll's the perfect guy to come do that. And even if he's only there for 5-6 years, you could hire a coordinator that's worked under Pete Carroll to kind of keep that culture that's already been established. But I think the next step for Las Vegas is certainly going to be finding that franchise quarterback. I'm going to give the Raiders hiring Pete Carroll, I'm going to give it a B. I think it's a solid hire. It could be worse. But I mean, there weren't too many home run guys on the market. I think Ben Johnson really might have been the only one. I mean, Mike Vrabel, who we're going to talk about next, I think that's a good hire as well. But that's what we'll talk about now. Mike Vrabel getting hired by the New England Patriots, played for the Patriots as his head end, had a ton of success at Tennessee, and then I was kind of surprised Tennessee moved off him, but I think Tennessee just kind of wanted a new face to lead the organization. And they decided to move off him, hired a more offensive-minded head coach in Brian Callahan, and now Mike Vrabel, just 1 year out of being a head coach, he served as some sort of assistant under the Browns, and now he's back as a head coach in New England. What do you grade it?
I'm gonna give it a B+. I do think Mike Vrabel is a great head coach, and like you said, people were shocked that they fired him.
Yep.
And I think he deserved another opportunity to be a head coach, and I think the Patriots are probably one of the best fits for him since he played there and he kind of knows the place. But I think the Patriots need to because he's a defensive-minded coach, and I think the Patriots defense is good. Now, if you have a DC coach, it's gonna be in the next level.
And because I mean, it's not the same thing, but in a way, it kind of is. The Bears with Matt Eberflus being their head coach. Obviously, Mike Vrabel, I think, is a better coach, head coach at least, than Matt Eberflus. But I mean, it's similar in the fact that you've got a young quarterback that you want to develop, and you have a defensive-minded head coach. I might have missed who the Patriots hired as their offensive coordinator, but the Patriots do need young offensive minds because Drake May obviously they drafted him at 3rd overall. That's right. They rehired Josh McDaniels, who I think is a good hire. Not a good head coach, but a good offensive coordinator. He was always good as a coordinator in New England. So you bring back him, pick up some weapons for Drake May. It'll be interesting to see what they do in the draft because they have a pretty high draft pick. Can they get Travis Hunter? What will Travis Hunter do in the NFL? Will he play wide receiver? Will he play cornerback? Will he play both? I don't know. I would assume he'll play cornerback for sure. Question is, will he play wide receiver too?
He said he wanted to play both sides of the ball. So.
I mean, he was so elite at both sides of the ball at Colorado, so it would make sense for him to. I mean, that's the thing. We haven't seen many guys like this. Travis Hunter is just a special player. Could Tennessee take him? Will Tennessee take a quarterback? We don't know. So, draft coming up, a couple months. We'll definitely be talking more about that as we enter the months of April. So the Patriots hiring Mike Vrabel. The Jets hired Aaron Glenn, another guy that could be a good culture hire for the Jets. What do you grade the hire?
This one kind of confused me because the Jets fired Robert
Saleh.
Yeah, because of his defensive-minded, because he was DC.
Well, I don't know if they fired him because of that, but they wanted a new voice and leadership, I guess. But honestly, things were a lot worse for them after they fired Robert Saleh.
But I do think Aaron Glenn is a great DC, and I'll be excited for him to see what he's going to do as the head coach. And like you said, I think he will build a better culture there, especially with like Rodgers leaving.
Well, we certainly saw Aaron Glenn's masterclass defensive game plan against Minnesota really kind of broke Minnesota. They were never the same after that game. Even the Rams just pounded them in the wild card round. But I think Aaron Glenn's a guy that can establish a culture there, something that's really been missing since the Rex Ryan days when they made the playoffs back in, I think 2010 was their last playoff appearance. So you bring in a guy like Aaron Glenn, we'll see what they do about the quarterback situation in the offseason with Rodgers leaving. They do, I believe, as long as they own their first-round pick, they're going to have a high draft pick. But I don't believe that they traded it away. But, I mean, they got guys there like Breece Hall's talented, Garrett Wilson's talented. Expect both those guys to be around. They've got plenty of guys on defense. We'll see if they can bring back DJ Reed. I think that's the guy that I really want the Vikings to get. The Vikings don't really have a true quarterback one.
Yeah.
I think Byron Murphy was kind of, and Byron Murphy did have a pretty good year. but I don't know if he's necessarily that CB1 elite level that the Vikings need, because their secondary really hasn't been good the past few years. They haven't had a good corner. They haven't had an elite corner in the NFL since those 2 years of Rhodes closed, Xavier Rhodes. It's been really troublesome for them since. Anyways, we don't want to get too off track here. We'll stay with these head coaching hires. Jacksonville and that whole weird deal of hiring Liam Cohen, the former Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator. Duval.
I don't know what I would give this. A C? Like, I don't hate it, but I don't love it.
Yeah, it's all right.
It might help them. I don't totally know, but
I mean, the whole timeline here with the Jaguars was, okay, we're gonna fire our head coach. It's pretty obvious after like week 6 that Doug Peterson was gone. He was gonna get fired. They have him go through the end of the season. You almost should have fired him around like week 11, week 12, just to kind of get a head coach, or just to get a head start on the head coaching search. But then you hold on to your GM, who I don't think is that bad of a GM actually, but then you fire him because a certain head coach wants to pick his GM. I'm like, their owner is just like, you're waiting too long to do some of these things.
Yeah.
And I don't think Liam Cohen's the worst hire. He was certainly not the worst head coaching hire of this cycle that's coming up next. But it just feels like it wasn't handled very well by their ownership, and things could have been handled better. But you get an offensive mind to get in there and work with Trevor Lawrence. Travis Etienne can't be that bad again. From your fantasy team, you know how poor he was this year. Obviously, he dealt with some injuries too, but Etienne did not have a good year. They've got 2 decent backs with Etienne and Bixby. Brian Thomas Jr. is a stud, despite how bad he was, like the Bugatti meme. He was good, but the rest of the Jaguars were not very good. But they've got him and some other young wide receiver and some other receivers as well that are talented. And I think that has potential to be a good offense. And you get a guy like Liam Cohen who can come in there and try and fix them up a little bit. And then we'll move on to the next hire. Dallas. That was that was an interesting situation for Dallas this offseason. Talking to Deion Sanders, that would have
been crazy.
That would have been a crazy hire. That's for sure. You move off of Mike McCarthy, which I think is a fine decision. Like, it feels like McCarthy kind of, in this day and age of his coaching career, kind of limits the ceiling of Dallas, but it also kind of helps the floor a little bit. You feel like a Mike McCarthy team's never going to finish lower than 7-10, but you also feel like Mike McCarthy team probably isn't finishing higher than 11-6 with a really good chance at winning the Super Bowl. But it's the head coaching hire that they made. They hire their former offensive coordinator, Brian Schottenheimer. I mean, he's been there for a couple years. He's been an offensive coordinator in the NFL for quite some years, but it's also led some really bad offenses. It really feels like that this is just a situation where Jerry Jones is punting and just kind of waiting for the next head coaching side. This hire has one and done written all over it. So that's why I'm going to give it probably a D- is generous, but that's what I'm going to give it.
I'm going to give it an A.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. I give it an F. I don't think the Cowboys should have hired him. I think they should maybe have kept him as the OC, but they should have went for the other 6 guys that were possibly available at that time. And I don't know. I was just shocked they hired him as the head coach.
And I mean, the Cowboys pretty soon are going to face problems with. I mean, you got to pay Parsons, you got to pay Lamb, you got to pay Dak. Dak was a fan of the hire. Well, it's just Dallas sports, man. Just recently, they've just been on the struggle bus. But I'm not too much of a fan either about that head coaching hire. But move on to the last hire here. Their former offensive coordinator, who they chased out of town, and then Kellen Moore ends up ending in Philadelphia, leads a very good offense this season to a Super Bowl win. And now Kellen Moore is going to New Orleans, where he just won a Super Bowl win, to be the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. What do you grade the Kellen Moore hire?
I'll give it a B. He's a really good OC. I mean, he did have a lot of weapons there at Philly. So it's going to be different because the Saints don't have too many weapons as much as the Eagles. I mean, they have Alvin Kamara,
Chris Olave,
and Shakir.
No, Shakir's the guy for the Bills. Rashid Shaheed was pretty solid before he got hurt. Actually, I was at the Saints-Falcons game earlier this year. Saw Shaheed drop a punt, which ended in an Atlanta touchdown. Definitely his low light of the year. But if we take that play away, I think Shaheed had a decent year when he was able to be in the field. And that was the problem with the Saints all year, is that they just had so many guys hurt, and they just couldn't overcome it.
I will say they might have to figure out the whole quarterback situation there at the Saints.
For sure, yeah, they got Derek Carr.
Spencer Rattler.
I think you saw a little bit of Rattler, and the other guy, Jake Hayner was his name. I don't think any of those guys showed anything this year that says that they can be the future of that franchise. And I mean, I have a hard time seeing them signing a different I have the hard time seeing them signing a free agent quarterback, especially when they're already paying Derek Carr a ton of money, unless they can move off of Derek Carr's contract. But I have a hard time seeing any NFL team trading anything for Derek Carr.
I think the only way they're going to be able to do anything is probably draft a quarterback this year, if they want to. But they just drafted one last year too. So
although they didn't spend too high of a draft pick on a quarterback last year, but that's the thing. The quarterback draft class isn't great this year. It's not terrible. It could be worse. Like
a couple good ones.
I think the 2022 draft class with who was it? It was Malik Willis was the number 2, and Kenny Pickett. Those are the top 2 quarterbacks. That was a really bad quarterback class.
Brutal.
Actually, the best quarterback in that class was Brock Purdy, who was Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah.
And that wasn't necessarily a great quarterback class. This quarterback class isn't that bad. Like, you got Shedeur Sanders, you got Cam Ward, you had Milroe from Alabama. Jalen Milroe from Alabama, I think, could be all right. But this quarterback class isn't the strongest. I think next year's is going to be a lot better. I think last year's was a lot better as well. Couple more things to hit on for the NFL. Speaking of quarterbacks, who's going to be the Vikings quarterback next year?
I'm hoping it's J.J. McCarthy.
I think me too.
He did very well in preseason, but that is preseason.
In his one game.
Yep. But I do think with Sam Darnold, I don't think he got us far enough to where we're going to want to pay him, because he didn't do that well the final couple weeks of the season. So I do think the Vikings move on from Sam Darnold, do not pay him that much money.
Because I think he's going to get $30 to $35 million at least. He might have played himself out of like a $40 million contract with those last couple weeks of the season. But I mean, to be honest, any of the teams that are going to sign him probably aren't going to be in that position where they're playing for their division and a number 1 seed in Week 18, or playing in the wild card round. Like, if I had to guess teams that would sign him, the Titans, I don't know, because I feel like they might take a quarterback number 1 overall. Like the Giants maybe would take a chance on. I don't think the Jets would sign him, but there's a couple teams that are like average to below average teams that I feel like could sign Sam Darnold. But I don't think the Vikings should do that. I think there are so many holes in this Vikings team that I think a lot of us realized, especially after they started 14-2. How many years have you watched Vikings football?
A lot. Since probably I was 4.
So 4. So 17, 18 years. I mean. So you're in your entire existence of watching Vikings football, they've struggled on the interior of the offensive line.
Yeah.
Can we please dish off $60 million to fix the interior of the offensive line? I mean, everybody gone. Darisaw and O'Neal are solid. Darisaw's injury also really hurt the Vikings offensive line last year. But I mean, inside you're starting Blake Brandel, Garrett Bradbury, who's 50 pounds undersized, and then Dalton Reisner at right guard. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. Come on. There's guys out there that you can either draft, or you can.
There's a couple good free agents
or you can sign in free agency. I mean, the Vikings have so much cap space because they're on a rookie quarterback deal. Where if you let Sam Darnold go, you're going to have all this cap space to improve your O-line, improve your defense. They need secondary help. Both their safeties are free agents, Harrison Smith and Cam Bynum. Metellus is a free agent too, I believe. Byron Murphy is a free agent. Stephon Gilmore is a free agent. Those are like all your guys in the secondary. Personally, Gilmore, I don't think the Vikings should bring him back. He really kind of regressed as the season went on. I think you try and find a way to get Murphy back, even though he's going to request some money. He was good for us. Bynum's a good locker room guy. And
good culture guy. Too. Good culture guy.
Harrison Smith would probably take a pay cut. He's not going to go anywhere else.
He did that last year too. So
like if he comes back, he'd probably come back on a pay cut and probably less money than what he could very well be getting paid. I think just in the trenches, both sides, on the offensive line and the defensive line, you really have to improve.
Yeah, I do think the Vikings have to move on from Sam Darnold to fill those spots this year.
And I think you got to just take your chance on your first-round quarterback that you picked. You traded up to get J.J. McCarthy at number 10 overall. I mean, he's from the sounds of Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, the GM, and then head coach Kevin O'Connell, they all think just really highly of J.J. McCarthy and really think he's going to be able to do good things in Minnesota. Obviously, KOC won Coach of the Year. We're going to get to that a moment ago. Or in a moment, I should say. He's been extended. Adolfo-Mensah could very well be next. The Vikings drafts haven't necessarily been great over the past few years, but I think this past draft class could be really good. We couldn't see much from Dallas Turner because Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel were both just studs at the outside linebacker position this year. But Turner did some good things towards the end of the year. Obviously, McCarthy we don't know yet because he tore his meniscus, was out the whole year. And going back to the interior offensive line, I know like the Vikings have had opportunities to pick guys with good draft picks. The problem is they've whiffed on those. Like Brad Berry's been a below average center. They drafted him in the first round. Ed Ingram was so bad, and they spent a second round pick on him. So part of it is they haven't drafted well enough. You look at a team like the Eagles, they've drafted like 9 guys in the first couple rounds the last 4 years or something like that, and they're all starters and all making big contributions. I'm like, if the Vikings can do this, that'd be very helpful. But obviously, they've made some great signings in free agency that have really helped them, but drafting they've kind of struggled with in years past. I mean, but you got to acknowledge some of the good, like Josh Metellus is really good. You drafted him in the 5th round. Justin Jefferson, drafted him at 22 overall. He's the best wide receiver in the NFL.
Jordan
Addison, was a good pick. So, I mean, Christian Darrisaw was a great pick. He's one of the best left tackles in the league. So they've made plenty of good picks, but also they've made a lot of bad picks. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I expect every single draft pick to be a home run draft pick. That's not going to happen. And you're going to take some gambles. You're going to hit some. You're going to miss some. But unfortunately, the Vikings through the past few years have missed more than they've made. So, which is a problem. But we'll see. Hopefully, they can fix that here in the upcoming years. They're not going to have a great draft pick this year. They very well could trade back because they don't have very many picks. They only have like 4 picks in this year's draft.
Yeah, not that much.
So they'll need some guys. All right, we'll move on here. Myles Garrett, starred edge rusher for the Cleveland Browns, recently requested a trade. Where do you think he could go? Or do you think the Browns trade him, I guess?
I think they have to trade him. He requested. I don't know if
it makes sense. It makes sense for the Browns to trade him. I mean, they're at the point where like, Myles Garrett might win you 6 games instead of 4, but like you'd rather only win 4 games so you can tank for high draft picks. I mean, winning 6 games ain't going to do you anything.
I do think they will get a lot for Myles Garrett.
Oh, you should. He's in the prime of his career.
Yeah, team's going to want him.
Any team should want Myles Garrett.
So,
every team in the NFL should be calling for Myles Garrett.
I do think the Minnesota Vikings should give him a call. Let him.
I don't.
Let him know.
Well, I mean, I shouldn't say I don't because, like, who wouldn't want Myles Garrett on your team? For the right price, you would. But honestly, I don't think Myles. It's hard to say Myles Garrett doesn't fit your scheme because he's that good. Like, he should be able to fit anybody's scheme, but he really doesn't fit the Vikings scheme, and the Vikings already have plenty of pass rushers.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they actually trade him or keep him. I mean, how long? Do you know how long he has on his contract?
I don't. Probably a couple years, but it doesn't really matter.
They'll probably trade him. So
I would think there's got to be a team that's going to be aggressive and ready to trade for him. We'll see, though.
There was something else, though. Either Debo or Debo's manager wanted to request a trade or something.
That's right.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, he had a really bad year.
Yeah,
really bad year. All right. We'll talk about the halftime show at the Super Bowl. How do you rate it?
I'll give it a good 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's about what I'm going to give it to. I think it was all right.
I enjoyed it.
My grandparents probably didn't enjoy it. Actually, my grandma told me at dinner last night that she didn't enjoy it.
I enjoyed it because I like Kendrick. I like his music. I do think that he probably could have played a little more of his like top songs.
Sure. Yeah. and
it makes sense because he's going on tour soon.
Sure.
He wants to do his new music. But I thought the stage and everything was really good. So
I mean, it really is a good pick for the NFL, and it aged really well because the guy wins 5 Grammys and he's performing at the Super Bowl halftime show.
That's true.
A week or 2 later. So, just overall quick thoughts of the Super Bowl and how it went. I know we discussed it a little bit, but just thoughts about how that game was and just Chiefs 3-peat, no more.
I didn't enjoy the Super Bowl. You know, very boring. It was like 24-0 at half or something like that, and
I thought Mahomes played terrible.
Yeah, the rest of the game did not matter. So, like we said, we weren't even paying attention the whole second half.
And I think Jalen Hurts really proved something.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the Chiefs, they made it no secret. Their focus was, we are not going to let Saquon Barkley beat us. So Jalen Hurts says, okay, you're gonna stack the box, not let Saquon Barkley beat you. Okay, I'll just throw it over the top on you all game, and he did that to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And by the way, that was not offensive pass interference on the opening drive. That was a bad call. I was not a fan of that. I mean, maybe there's a little contact to the helmet. It didn't matter anyways. I mean, we won the Super Bowl by 20.
There was a couple missed calls that game, or bad calls.
Yeah.
But I do think I lost my train of thought. I lost it.
Either way, the Eagles win the Super Bowl. Just think about them and halting dynasties. You can't say stopping dynasties because they didn't stop the Patriots dynasty. The Patriots won the Super Bowl the next year. We'll see if the Chiefs dynasty continues. The Chiefs dynasty continues in the next year.
I think this game actually showed how fraudulent the Chiefs were this year. Like
they certainly could have lost more games than they did.
Should have lost a lot more games.
I watched that game thinking, how did the Bills or Ravens not beat? Or I guess the Ravens didn't get an opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, how did the Bills not beat this team?
Yeah, there was like, I don't know if you saw this, but you see the effort from Travis Kelce on some of the blocks and stuff, and it just didn't seem like
I don't know.
It just didn't seem like the Chiefs wanted it as much as the Eagles. So
We'll quickly run through NFL honors here. MVP Josh Allen, Offensive Player of the Year Saquon Barkley, DPOY Patrick Surtain, Offensive Rookie of the Year Jaden Daniels, Defensive Rookie of the Year Jared Verse, Comeback Player of the Year Joe Burrow, Coach of the Year Kevin O'Connell. I think anything stick out to you there?
The Joe Burrow one. You know, I really thought it was gonna be Sam Darnold. I think he deserved it, but I think the last couple of weeks kind of probably maybe affected it a little bit. But otherwise, I do think this was a good awards this year.
Obviously, MVP was the entire Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. I kind of want Saquon Barkley to win the MVP because he was.
He carried that offense for a lot of the year.
It was like Adrian Peterson back in 2012. So
obviously he gets a couple extra games than Peterson got in that 2012 season, but nevertheless.
The thing I will say is if Saquon played that last game, he would have broken the record. So I'm saying.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. All right, we'll talk a little NBA here. We'll start with the trade deadline because it was a wild one at that. Just more thoughts again about the Luka Doncic trade to the Lakers and then Anthony Davis going to the Mavericks and what that means for each organization.
I think for the Lakers, this puts them up there in a championship contender. They've been playing well. They've won 6 games in a row now, and I think this will help them move up and probably get a spot in the playoffs and try to make a run. Maybe get LeBron his last ring before he might retire.
I mean, I saw something earlier today that the Lakers now have like the second highest odds in the West to make it to the conference finals, only behind OKC. So certainly people are believers that the Lakers can go out there and they can go contend this year. I know a lot of people initially when the trade broke, they thought it was a deal where they are going to make themselves contenders in the future. Well, I mean, and it also helps they've played very well over the last couple of weeks. Even before the Luka trade, they were rolling, playing really well. And now with the Luka trade, they've continued to play well. Now you add Doncic into the mix as well as LeBron. And I mean, Luka's just a guy that's going to make everyone around him, at least in the offensive end, that much better. I mean, watch the first 6-7 minutes of the Lakers Jazz the other night. He made Jackson Hayes look like a decent offensive center. Jackson Hayes has never been good in his NBA career. So, I mean, obviously he made all those bigs like Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively. He made all of them look very good in Dallas in the postseason last year, delivering all those lobs to him. So Luka's a guy, he's going to make all of them better, and he's 25 years old, 5-time first team All-NBA. He's done so many things in his career already. Led the Mavericks to an NBA Finals appearance a season ago, losing in 5 to Boston, and no doubt he's going to do many good things for the Lakers in the future. But I think I want to take a little time here and talk about what this means for the Mavericks because things have gotten a little ugly in Dallas since that trade broke.
Yeah, a lot of fans have not been happy with that organization.
That's safe to say.
What was it? A couple days after the trade broke, they were like refunding season pass holders money. Some fan was on the Jumbotron and got kicked out because he mouthed "fire Nico," who is the GM of the Mavericks. And I think this is just a bad look for the organization. You see Mark Cuban on the sidelines yelling at a fan to sit down.
Yep.
It's just blown up from that trade. And
I know, like Nico Harrison, the Mavericks GM, he had to hire like
security or something. Yeah.
To 24/7 security to like watch his house, which I mean makes sense. We've seen plenty of famous people like Joe Burrow this last season had his house get broken into, and that's Joe Burrow, who had really nobody has anything against. I mean, to be honest, I didn't really know who the Mavericks GM was until that trade broke, and now you just see his name everywhere. So it's a big W for the Lakers. We'll see about the Mavericks. If they win an NBA title with Kyrie and Anthony Davis in the next few years, it won't look as bad. But if Luka is, I mean, I think Luka's definitely already, his career could end today, and he'd probably already be a Hall of Famer. And he's 25 years old. Yeah. So you're trading a future Hall of Famer away for Anthony Davis, a guy who's going to be in the Hall of Fame as well.
Oh, easily.
He's a great player and is going to have a good career in Dallas as long as he can stay healthy. But I don't know how confident I am that I can say that the Mavericks are going to win an NBA championship in the next few years, because it probably only feels like they have a few years of Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving playing together in Dallas, don't you think? How about the De'Aaron Fox trade to the San Antonio Spurs and then that 3-team deal, which ended in Sacramento getting Zach LaVine?
You know, I think it was a good move for the Spurs. They need a good point guard besides Chris Paul, because he's going to retire soon.
Yep.
We all know that. And De'Aaron Fox is an all-star player. And now you pair him with Wemby. Like, Spurs are scary in the future.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Fox and Wemby are going to be very good for them to use. Are going to be very good in years to come here, especially when you got when you still have Wemby on a rookie deal for the next few years. You can kind of do what the Thunder are doing right now, really just kind of overpaying role players. Like the Thunder are so scary. I mean, you've got SGA, Chet Holmgren are stars, and then like Jalen Williams is very good, and they were able to overpay for guys like Alex Caruso this offseason to really kind of round out their roster. And now you look at OKC, they're like 43-9, and I think they're widely regarded. I think everybody thinks they're the top team in the West, the top dog to beat. They were the 1 seed last year. I know they're this much better this year, and I guess they didn't. I'm trying to think. Did they trade or did they sign for Caruso in the offseason? I don't know. Either way, they shipped off Josh Giddey. I think no, that's right. They did a Giddey for Caruso straight up swap. That's right. But that's besides the point. We'll talk more trades here. Jimmy Butler going to Golden State.
I actually love this trade. Like,
really?
I love this trade. If you've seen how the Warriors have been playing with Jimmy Butler, it seems like with Jimmy Butler, everybody just came alive, because you see everybody happy on that team. Everybody's joyful. Like you see a team environment there now. And Jimmy Butler is a great player. He has been, always will be. But then comparing Stephen Curry, who everybody says is washed, but is doing 30 points a game.
Yeah, no, Curry's still doing his thing. I've never seen anybody say that.
There was
unless they're a hater.
There was some stuff saying like he's going down, or whatever. But then he's been averaging 30.
I don't know about that.
But then giving him another All-Star like he did with KD, to let Curry rest sometimes.
Yep.
Then you have Butler to help carry that load. I think it was a good trade for the Warriors.
We'll see how it pans out though. The West is kind of stacked in that 7 to 10 range, which is the play-in. Yeah. So it's going to be. I think the Warriors will be a play-in team, especially after making that trade. I think they're too talented with Curry and Butler not to make the play-in. Wiggins still around there as well, but we'll see how that pans out.
Wiggins got traded to the Heat.
Oh, was he a part of that Jimmy Butler deal?
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense. Yep. Thanks for including that. I guess I had forgot. Either way, obviously Jimmy Butler's still an upgrade over Andrew Wiggins, but you still have that duo with Curry and Butler. Any other trades that stick out to you?
The Dalton Connect one from
that was
Williams.
weird.
That was a weird one. I mean,
and now it's just awkward, awkward situation for everybody.
Yeah, so the Lakers found something wrong with Mark Williams during his physical, and so they rescinded the trade, and now the last Lakers game, you can just see Dalton Connect on the bench, just like not doing anything, not cheering anything. It's just such an awkward situation because they traded you away, but then they had to cancel it because the dude wasn't good enough. So now you're back on that team, and
it wasn't that he wasn't good enough. It was more that he just they didn't believe that he was going to be able to play in a lot of games for them in the near future. So so he failed his physical. But I mean, some people will say, "Oh, Connect, I feel so sorry for you. You have to go back to playing for the greatest player of all time, and now Luka Doncic is the most popular team by far in the NBA right now." But I mean, it's more than that. It's almost like you have this feeling of betrayal within the organization that they don't believe in you anymore. And they drafted me in the first round, but they don't believe in me anymore. They're going to trade me because they want this other player.
Yeah, it just seems like they gave up on you, and you just.
I mean, part of it for the Lakers is they don't necessarily think that Connect is a bad player, but they really liked Mark Williams and the way he fit into this team, and they really. The choke on line. The Lakers need a center. They had that center on Mark Williams. They don't anymore. So as we just mentioned a moment ago, Jackson Hayes sliding in as that starting center. But yeah, now you trade him and then he's back, and it's just a weird situation overall.
There was something about that it's going to take him a little while to get back into it. It's just a weird situation to be in for Connect. So.
It should be a fun rest of the NBA season, though. I mean, the All-Star break is coming up here already this weekend. We're going to have about a week off of the NBA, and then we'll have, 25 more games, and then it'll be playoff time. And it's been an interesting season. A lot of cool storylines in the NBA playoffs. As much as the regular season can kind of be a snooze fest, the playoffs are always a lot of fun.
Yeah, easily.
This weekend in Jackrabbit Athletics, South Dakota State men will host Omaha. It's a big game upcoming at First Bank and Trust Arena, and then later in the week, each team will play USD. The women will host them on Saturday. The USD men's game earlier this year in Brookings was a great environment. We expect the women's one to be a great one as well. The men travel to Vermilion on Sunday. It's a nationally televised game as South Dakota State looks for the regular season series sweep against the Coyotes of South Dakota. We'll talk about those a little bit. We'll dive into some more South Dakota State basketball on our show next week. It's great to be back this week, and our new show here with the video option. They can see our faces now.
I know. It's a big upgrade from the radio place.
So that's all for episode 1 of the second semester here at the Jackrabbit Sports Hour. We thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you guys next week.